Hi, Vitor. Welcome to my podcast.
Hello. I
Yeah,
was definitely expecting this.
it was a quick one. It's a quick intro. No, I don't want to entertain people with music. I want to bring them to the real stuff, right away. So that's what we are here. Talk about real stuff and real estate and your journey and all that. Now, I'm going to just apologize in advance. For some reason, I thought you were in Algarve and not in the north. But there's always this Portuguese man in the south trying to make
I
money,
mean,
and
yeah,
that's a thing, but make money with foreigners, but not the
yeah,
case.
it's a fair assumption, yeah. And I know we're gonna get into it later, but as you probably know, I'm in real estate and all of these things. And when I started and started paying some attention to what other people were doing about real estate in general and the business and stuff like that, I did very quickly notice that almost every Portuguese real estate agent that was targeting foreigners in any way, shape, or form would almost always focus on Lisbon, Porto, Algarve, because it's where usually the most expensive properties are. It's where they get the biggest commissions supposedly for selling properties. But I always wanted to help people live good lives. I like the north. I like sharing, details about the north. I'm here from Ponte Lima, and so if somebody wants to go to Algarve or whatever, I have colleagues there. I can refer. I can help them get there if they want, but I'm not going to focus on that, even if that might be more profitable for me because I want to do what feels right, right? And that's basically it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, makes complete sense. Just before we get into your journey, your adventure, yourself, all that, I just want to encourage people that are watching us, if they are having fun, please reward us with a thumbs up. If they know someone who is not watching it and they'll be interested in this kind of stuff like real estate, business, expat life, just share. We'll be here for an hour or maybe a bit longer, around an hour. That's the average. And if you haven't subscribed, please do, because that's how this thing gets spread, and we need to cooperate. Also, the chat box is open, so if you have any question for Vitor Costa or for me, we are more than happy to answer. You see, Vitor is very willing to be interactive. So I was just telling you when we're talking off camera that although I'm a man of the south, I'm a big fan of the north, and I've been targeted because there is some rivalry between the north and the south, as you know. And I can tell like a personal anecdote. Like there was a time that I was looking for a job. I was in my early 20s, struggling and all that, and I spent a lot of time visiting people in the north, and and my friends in the south say, so why don't you just move there? I say, well, I go there for fun. I go there for fun, and they couldn't understand. And then the guys from the north was like, why are you coming back? I said, well, we need to cover expenses and all that. So there is this funny thing between north and south. Yeah,
Yeah, the usual rivalry and banter and stuff like that, right? Usually pretty harmless in Portuguese standards.
yeah, big time, big time. So let's start with your baby, with the Portugal door. Yeah, that's how it's
Hmm.
called, Portugal door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you can take us through the beginning, how did you start? What was your main motivation? Just to get people an overview.
Sure. So I was a baby when I was born.
Really?
uh,
Oh,
starting maybe a little bit further into the future, right? So some context, there was a point in time where like life wasn't really making a lot of sense for me, right? This
mm,
whole thing about being at a dead end job and having to work to pay your bills and whatever, and supposedly having to do that for decades until then one day you had to retire. That wasn't working with me. That was causing really weird inner turmoil in there. I don't know if I was depressed or whatever it was. Life was pretty hard. I couldn't like make sense of getting a job. Seemed very weird for me, but at the same time, not getting a job and having my now wife having to rely on her working to afford her expenses and all of those things, that also didn't seem right to me, right? So I was stuck between a rock and a hard place with no way out. And by the way, it's not that I didn't like working. I didn't like having a job or being productive or anything like that. But I was always disillusioned because I always had this idea that the priorities, for a business, for a company, whatever it was, should always be clients, people who work with you, and then the company, and then the managers, and whatever, right? So putting things in priority, the client being always the first priority. And one problem that I always came across is that it felt like most jobs you could get in most companies, they would focus on just, you'd had some kind of manager. They would tell you to do something just because they have the authority to do so. And I'm okay with following orders, but I'm really not. It doesn't work for me to follow orders if they seem like they're not the best thing for anybody involved and it's just someone flexing authority to do that, right? HR being like really inconsiderate people, let's say, like sometimes you'd ask them, hey, I have this trouble going on, can we do this, blah blah blah, and then they wouldn't reply to you, and then you'd get an email from them like 5 minutes later, hey, can you do overtime, right? So that kind of disparity. And then other situations where, like, I don't know, one time I worked at a gas station. I've done a bit of everything, okay? I don't know if I should share this, but I've worked
Sure.
at a gas station. I've worked in a restaurant waiting tables. I've also worked in the kitchen. And I also quit that job because I could not, like, I didn't feel right cooking that food for me, let alone somebody else who was paying me. So, I had a meeting with the owners, like, hey, guys, I would prefer if we do the cooking this way. Like, I'm not a chef or anything like that. I have some basics. I did some research. I do have supposedly a course on Portuguese cuisine, even though I don't really, look at credentialism very favorably. It's like either you can do it or not. I don't care if you have a degree or not. And so I had a meeting. Hey, if we do this, I can stay here. I can help you build a restaurant. But that didn't happen, so I quit. I've worked at McDonald's, which, to be fair, that was the place where I liked working on the most, right? But again,
Why
on
was that?
basis, yeah,
Why was that? Or what was?
because McDonald's, at least where I worked, it was a very well-oiled machine. Like, let's say, you had your station. Someone will be in the kitchen. The other one will be preparing the hamburgers. Another one was handling the fries. Another one was on the drinks and desserts. Another one was collecting, like waiting to see where the hot sandwiches were prepared and seeing the menu. And then when all of the hot sandwiches were there, you tap the button. A sticker would come out, put it on the tray, put all of the hot stuff in there, go get the fries, go get the drinks, and deliver it. And then if all of a sudden, for example, we were just chilling, and then some kind of soccer game or whatever ended, and you had a flood of people suddenly come into the doors, then the co-workers would just be like, guys, we're starting to get fired up, everyone to your stations, and boom, 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 that would work. Until the managers came along. Because when the managers realized that we all of a sudden had a ton of people walking in the doors, they would decide to come to the front and delegate, which usually involved interrupting us for nonsense reasons. Like there was one where everything was moving, and then all of a sudden she would say, "Everyone, stop! Let's calm down." And we would all stare at her like, you're the only one stressing out. Thank you for interrupting, right? And another moment that I remember was that, so we were 3 people waiting for the sandwiches so we could prepare the trays. Going on a completely tangent here, but whatever. 3 people already had the trays ready. Next step would be the fries, right? But there were no fries because they had ran out, and then we had one co-worker that was taking care of the fries. You have to go there, fill the baskets, put it in the thing, press the button, go fill another one, so on and so forth. And then because we were backlogged, I was like, hey, co-worker name, do you need some help? Yes, please, go put 2 baskets in there and put it here. And I'm like, you got it. And then the manager was like, no, that's her station, let her do it. And I'm like, okay. And so 3 people were just there with trays in hand, looking at our colleague rushing from one side to the other to try and make that happen, right? And so all of these things combined, and then I was talking about putting clients first, right? At the gas station, we had one of those coin-operated coffee machines that it had like a jug, a 5-liter jug of water, inside the door where to draw the water to take the coffee. And one time that ran out, right? Normal. And so one of my coworkers, she called the boss and was like, "Hey, the water in the machine ran out. Should I get like a 1.5-liter bottle that we have here for sale and fill it up?" And the guy's like, "Nah, just fill it with tap water." I mean, tap water, you can't drink it here in Portugal, for those who don't know, but like, doesn't really taste the same. It's lower quality. So the guy was just doing this to penny pinch. And so all of these things made me think that having a job just for the sake of having a job and the salary didn't make sense for me. And it was
How old were you when you got to that conclusion, more or less?
So it was probably during my 20s, most of my 20s. Right. Then when I was about 27 years old, my brother recommended that I listen to this book right here, Rich Dad Poor Dad. You probably know about it, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, at the time, it was the audiobook, which was free on YouTube, and you can probably still find it, because buying a book was too expensive at the time, right? And so I listened to it, and then it finally started clicking. It finally started making sense. You should work to learn skills, to become better, to then build systems, understand business, build a business, invest, have your money work for you, and then basically start providing value to society, right? And one of the key things that he said was that you should get a job for what you can learn, not how much you can earn.
Yeah.
And also, he would also advise that you should never invest in anything that you don't have knowledge about. And so I put one and one together. So why don't I look for a job where I can gain knowledge and I can get an income? And then I looked at real estate. I figured that real estate would be something that I'd want to be part of my life and future. And then real estate had also another advantage, which is, on the one hand, I don't really have an earning ceiling. So if I do really good work, I can earn a lot more commission. But also, at the same time, which is something that I personally like, if I don't do a good job, my income is zero. So I had to perform, otherwise I'm not getting anywhere, right? So I became a real estate agent. This was, I think, during the start of COVID, actually. So that didn't make it particularly fun. It was kind of far away. We can then get into the whole mess that it was the first year, because didn't really have the best help there, even though I did meet some cool people. But long story short, I was in real estate for about 2 years before I actually started making money on it. And my mom would call me every week like, "Hey, Vitor, did you get the job already?" No, I've made the decision. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become good at this, and I'm going to grow. And I don't want to have a salary job ever again, because this is what I feel like I need to do. And then maybe because of my English skills, maybe because I would used to share a lot of motivational stuff on Facebook. And mind you, it's not the kind of motivational stuff that on that YouTubers group we are on, where people take AI or Bruce Lee quotes or whatever and make garbage videos just to recycle and try to get views. I would share stuff that I had already gone through. It's applicable, it's more specific, not really generic, like, I don't know, oh, think happy thoughts and everything will be fine, right? Happy thoughts help in a way, but you still need to put action into it in order to get anywhere, right? And so one thing led to another. Then there was this guy that also has a YouTube show about living here in Portugal. He's from the UK. His name is Carl Munson. His show is called Good Morning Portugal. And so I went on his show and started talking a bit being myself, talking about what I think, what I feel about the Portuguese market. And then we had some American people start hitting me up. Hey, I need some help. I want to go to Portugal as well, blah, blah, blah. And one thing led to another. And then I started focusing a lot on the expat community, particularly Americans, because I understand the American culture quite a bit for some reason, even though I've never been to the US. But I have a lot of friends there. Media. I'm always like on Facebook or whatever, talking to people. They're from there. I have an idea what's going on, and so I started focusing on that market. And then because I was also studying a lot, American real estate agents, because I wanted to be a good real estate agent, but it feels like most agencies here are only focusing on the profit, are only focusing on like they don't really care about being great real estate agents as long as they're making money. Who cares, right? And so I started looking outside of the agencies. Like I would see Tom Ferry, which is a really good Tom Ferry coach. I actually asked my dad for a sort of a loan so that they could hire one of their coaches, so that I could actually understand how to be a real estate agent instead of they would just teach me how to lead gen, making phone calls and whatever. Hey, I work on real estate. If you know anybody who wants to buy or sell, which, okay, I understand that, but how am I a real estate agent? What value do I provide? How does an owner benefit from contracting me in an exclusive agreement? Because here in Portugal, you have the open listings and the exclusive listings. How is that a benefit to the client? They would just tell me to shut up. You already have enough training, just to the lead gen, right? And it didn't make sense to me to try and sell something to someone that I didn't know had value in it. I needed to understand the value first before selling it. Now I can talk until the cows come home. But that was kind of what I was going through. And then when I started learning the American real estate, I started realizing how much different it is here in Portugal. Like, we don't have an MLS. An MLS is like a system that tells you every detail about a property, who owns it, who bought it, everything. Like last week, I sent a referral from one of my friends in Texas, has a home that he's thinking about selling. So I got in touch with an agent from there. Hey, this is Vitor from EXP here in Portugal. I have a friend there in your region that has a home for sale, blah, blah, blah. The address is this and that. Okay, let me look up the address. Okay, so your friend's name is so-and-so. He bought the property on this year for this amount. We don't have that information here in Portugal. Not yet. And with the GDPR, that's it's probably not going to be easy.
Is it a Portuguese thing or an European?
The what?
Is it a Portuguese thing or an European?
Yeah, it's the European GDPR, right? The other challenge is that the real estate companies are also kind of, hey, I'll share the details of my agency's deals when that agency shares theirs. Oh, I'm only sharing mine if they do it. And so everybody's just going through that process, right? That being said, you have that difference of information. And another important thing is that you also have the difference of, I guess I could call it professionalism in a way. Again, I'm not a big proponent of credentialism, meaning that just because you have a course or a degree or anything along those lines that you're better than anyone else for some reason. You can have the best degree in the world but be really dumb, and you can have no degrees and be really smart, and vice versa. But in the US, if you want to be a real estate agent, you need to take a course, you need to pass their tests, their exams, you need to do the ethics tests or whatever. I've never done it, so I can't give you all of the details, but it's costly, it's time consuming, you can fail, and only when you go through all of that, which usually takes about a month at least, can you actually start selling real estate. Here in Portugal, you just go to an agency. Hey, I want to sell real estate. Perfect. Sign right here. You're a service provider. You're good to go.
Wow.
So
that's easy.
Yes, unfortunately. And a lot of people, they see real estate as like a part-time job.
Yeah.
So they, I don't know, they're working at the supermarket or whatever it is. They decide to become a real estate agent so that they can sell properties on their spare time. And so the usual quality of listings you have here in Portugal is subpar because people don't have training, they don't have experience. As long as they get paid, whatever. And it can be a small issue, especially if you're not working with someone who understands the market and is able to negotiate and go through all of it and make sure that the property is legal and everything is okay.
That's probably the reason, Vitor, sorry to cut you off,
Yep.
why the reputation of a real estate agent in Portugal, it's not the ideal. Because uh, folks approach that job as something they do on the side just to get some extra money. And of
Yes.
course, who would rely people who dedicate a couple of hours every day to try to fill their pockets, So they don't have like passion or dedication. They're just there trying to, they're not making a living, but just trying to fill the gaps.
Well, if you'd like, I can give you my theory on many of the layers that I think lead to that. So, for one, I mean, yeah, it is a part time for many. There are exceptional, really talented, ethical, and good real estate agents here in Portugal. Okay, there's no doubt about that. But most of them, are just trying to get some extra cash. That is true. The other thing, also, kind of small side note disclaimer, the perception people have of a real estate agent is that they make a lot of money. And as with anything in the world, if someone thinks you make a lot of money, they're going to hate you by default.
Yeah.
That being said, just to get you an idea, in the United States, about 50% of realtors close 2 or less properties per year. Here in Portugal, I suspect that to be closer to 80%, meaning that about 80% of real estate agents aren't even doing a quarter of Portuguese minimum wage. Okay. But the perception is that if you're a real estate agent, you're just taking advantage of people to make money out of them. And to be fair, if you don't have training and knowledge and you know what you're doing, that's kind of what you're doing in a way. And I can give you some examples, right? So
Yeah. I think
one thing I can
that's the one
say,
thing that I think maybe the real estate agents take advantage because it's a need. You cannot live
yes,
without a
there are
home.
many desperate
It's
agents out
like
there.
you can, I don't know, you can avoid certain foods. You can set aside a couple of habits, let's say drinking, eating out. You may refrain to travel, but you need a place to live. So it's an absolute need. So that's why I
Yeah.
think we tend to think Asians as people who are trying to use our fragility to make money, which is to a degree it's unfair.
I mean, it really depends on how it's done. I always see it like this. As long as you're providing someone value and they know what they're getting and you're being a benefit to them. Like, for example, if as an example, if me being here on your podcast could cause you to grow exponentially and I charge you 50,000 for it and you knew you would get that exponential growth that you'd be worth more than 50,000 for you, you'll probably gladly pay that to me, and because it is worth it for you,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
The reverse is also true. Let's say I was a struggling real estate agent, but I had a good opportunity to be on your podcast, and if I was here, I would be getting a lot of clients. I could get out of that. I could do all of these things. I would find a way to get the 50,000 to pay you so that I could have that career going on,
Yeah.
right?
That's
But
the long term that most people
yeah,
don't see. They are only looking for the instant gratification, and then they end up what they call wage cage.
yeah. And the other thing too, which is important to consider, is the so many people are struggling, right? And I know that because been there, done that. We all have problems. They change manners, but especially when your life isn't going well or the way that you desire, then it's normal to start looking for boogeyman, right? Uh, some of the most common boogeymans that exist are, people like blaming foreigners or blaming the rich or blaming the politicians or blaming the climate or whatever it is. The other guy in Germany blamed an entire religion for it, and he did what he did, right?
Yeah.
So there will always be a scapegoat. And when people are not happy about something, whether it's valid or not, they're always going to look for something to be upset about. Again, real estate agents, because there is the perception that they make a lot of money, and also in many cases, there's also the perception that they do that without really adding value. It's a good target to hate. But again, there are many cases where I can understand that hatred, right? So here in Portugal, most properties are called open listing, meaning you have a home to sell. And then I say, hey, do you know anyone who wants to sell a property? Oh, I want to sell this property, but I only sell it in open listing. Okay, that means that I can sign an agreement with you, but then you can go to the other agency and the other agency and the other agency, and I have 5 agencies selling the same property, which, in my opinion, it's not very. I would rather not take a listing than have a listing in open, because it's all a mess. It's the owner trying to take advantage of the agent for possibly not having to pay them. It's the agent trying to take advantage of the owner so that if maybe a client comes along, they will get a commission. And so that's why there's no real commitment between most agents and owners. It's like each person is trying to take advantage of the other.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where that relationship and that perception comes from, because a lot of real estate agents are incredibly annoying. They'll harass you, they'll bother you if you want to sell the home and whatever, and they'll lie to you, sometimes really big lies, sometimes small lies. They'll say like, oh, I'm calling because we have many clients who want to buy in your area. Sometimes that's true, but most of the time that's a script that their broker or whatever taught them, and they're just repeating it because they're desperate to get the deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people can smell that. Like if you tell someone that, oh, we have clients interested, then okay, then bring them here. That's what I would say. When I call someone and say, hey, I have a client interested in a property, okay, then bring them here. Sure, no problem. And if they don't want to pay commission, I already have an agreement with my buyer that we get a certain amount that we are guaranteed. If we can share it with another agency, then they just pay us the difference. If not, or if it's an owner selling directly, then they pay that amount. And we can do that. Like I've done visits even without contracts, to people who wanted to sell properties because I had a client that was interested in there, right?
What are your thoughts? Sorry to cut you off. What are your thoughts? Because it's something that we are discussing now, or we are going that direction. What are your thoughts on auctions? Because one thing that's very common in Ireland, let's say there is an apartment or a house for sale, and asking price is, I don't know, 500,000. Okay,
Yeah.
And then let's say I'm interested in that property, and I submit an offer, and before I submit the offer, some real estate agents mentioned that, I know the asking price was 500,000, but we already have offers. At the moment, the minimum we are accepting, the minimum bidding is 550. Are you fan of that, or do you think that requires some transparency mechanism to make sure that it's fair for all the parties?
Right. So now that you mentioned it, I don't think I've ever been in an auction in terms of real estate. But I know there are different types of auctions. There are those direct ones where you know what the highest bid is, and then you do your own bid. And then there are the close options and the close offers that, hey, just send your best offer. And then whoever ends up with the highest one that you don't know what it is gets to take the home. So on that stance and that situation, I would say it kind of depends a lot on what the situations are. Okay, so what do I mean by that? I tend to be kind of more pragmatic in a way, when it comes to decision making. And even when I'm working with clients, I tell them as well, look, my deal here is two main things when I'm working, for example, with a buyer to help them negotiate. One is that they get the best deal possible. And two, that a deal is possible. What do I mean by this? So let's say that there is a property on the market that's maybe worth 200,000. Let's say that's the fair market value. Okay. But the seller will only sell it for 250,000, any less, and they will not sell it and take it off the market, period. Then I'll let my client know, hey, look, I mean, according to my study, this property is only worth 200. But it's the only property on this area. It has this characteristic. It has this that you want. It has this that you need. Do you want to overpay for a property, or do you want to keep looking? And then it's the buyer's decision. So if I were in a position where I was having to maybe auction on a property that I didn't know what the highest bid was, what I would do is, first of all, I would think and do the math. How valuable would this property be for me? Is this something that I want, that I need? Would I be renting this out? Would I be fix and flipping it? Would I be living here? Would this be a house for my parents? Whatever it was, I would do that first. And then I would determine, what value, how much would I be willing to pay for that house, right? If it's an investment, of course, it needs to be up to a certain point because of the estimated rental price and whatever. And then once I determine both of those things, then I would think, is this a house that I can afford losing? Or is this a house that would be nice to have if I can get it for this amount? I would say if it's a house that it would be nice to have if I can get it for this amount, then I will do a decent offer and see if that would work. If it didn't work, that's fine. If I didn't pay any more for that, it didn't go through, whatever. I didn't lose money, no regrets. But if it's something that I really want, I'll probably go towards my top price and do that as the offer. If it doesn't get accepted, then it was probably too expensive for what I was looking for.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, completely. Yeah. It's a tricky one, but I think most people are not very good with money just to start with, and with negotiation and all that. Well, let's move now to, we can go back to revocation, but let's move to the revocation topic, which is something we added to the agenda. So how would you sell, I'm just talking about expats, how would you sell Portugal as a place of residence for someone who is hesitant? I know it depends on the profile, because people have different needs, ambitions, life dreams. But in general, what would be Portugal selling points?
Well, I'll just, because I like being very specific with words, I usually don't really sell Portugal because when clients come to me, they're already sold on it. But there are definitely many things that, especially after I started working with expats and people moving here, that I started appreciating a lot more about our country. So for one is that Portugal is an incredibly safe country. Okay, it usually ranks between the 3rd and 7th safest country in the world. I don't know exactly which one it is right now, and it doesn't really matter because it's still way on the top there. You know what's happening in many other countries, and it's not the prettiest thing out there, right? So security is one of the most important ones. Quality of life, cost of life also. You have all of these benefits that it's not really easy to find in any other countries, right? So that's the main thing: quality of life, good food. Especially many of the clients that we have that came here from America, after a few weeks, they became more elegant. They looked healthier. They looked happier. I don't know if that's from all of the walking that they did, or if it's because of the food, but they definitely look better, right? So I would say that's a big plus.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's also the honeymoon when you move to a new place. Like I lived in 5 countries myself, So there's always what I call the honeymoon period. When you
Yes.
start, everything is pinkish. It's the same. Let's say you move to a new place, you are dating someone for the first few weeks, or even if you get into a new job, doesn't matter. Like the first couple of weeks, for the most part, they are positive because everything is new,
Mhm.
and you are
Yep.
leaning towards things that are joyful. So that's also. But yeah, I think the other is the sunshine because we have abundant sunshine even in the north. So
Oh
I
yeah, the
think
sunshine too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I would add that one. Yeah. So one thing very interesting you mentioned, Vitor, while we were telling your interactions with expats, that you also start to appreciate your own country more after talking to those fellows. So can you take us through that transformation?
Yeah. So there are a lot of things that we take for granted, right? The quality of life, the food. The food is a big one. For example, I learned that here in Europe, about 36 of the 39 preservatives that they use in the US are banned here. So right off the bat, like food is much healthier. Like one time I went with a client. She was actually quite a unique client. Like one of her favorite pastimes and activities was looking at graveyards and taking pictures. So I took her to see some graveyards, right? Talk about graveyard shift. But I went with her to the supermarket. She wanted to buy some stuff, some food and whatever for what she was saying. And she grabbed a pack of chips or fries or whatever you call it there in Ireland. And she started looking at the ingredients and she's like, what do you mean this only has 3 ingredients? Oil, potatoes, salt. What? And then she started saying that if that was in the US, you'd have like a huge list of all kinds of stuff in it. And I'm like, you know what? I never really considered that we really do have good food. And then it's a fresh produce, right? Sometimes
Yeah,
we have clients from Canada that would be like, whenever they went to the supermarket, the lettuce there was already getting soft and yellowish because it's a big chain of transportation, and by the time that produce gets to their country, it's already a bit stale. The fact that we are so walkable and everything is within reach, and in many places here in Portugal, you can live somewhere and you can walk to a cafe or you can walk to a grocery store or something like that, where in the US you had to take a car. Things along those lines. Or things that I don't know all of them by heart, but many of them that you
yeah.
start realizing that
Just in
we
terms of
really do have.
mobility, one thing that I would add is not even okay. One is what you just mentioned within Portugal, but also they can just get on a low cost flight and visit every single country in Europe, which is not something
Yes.
which available for Americans if they are based in their home country. And of course, like the country is huge and every state is quite different, but
Hmm.
the broad access we have Europe is something that we, well, we not only Portuguese but Europeans, we tend to take for granted, and that's a mistake because we can access so much that um, we cannot even imagine. So that's very good. What would be the reason for not, is there a reason for someone uh, think twice before moving to Portugal? Like, is there a
Oh,
blocker?
definitely, definitely,
Anything? Yeah,
definitely,
yeah,
definitely. And again, that is why I don't like selling people on Portugal. I
mm,
like talking to people about Portugal. I like weighing the pros and cons. And if they find that Portugal is right for them, I want to assist them in having the smoothest transition possible. But I often, actually, when I have the first meeting with clients, I also put it on the front, the potential negative aspects of coming to Portugal, right? And because I want I want to make them sure. I want people to be sure that if they are coming to Portugal, they know what they're getting themselves into. That's what they signed up for, and that everything will be fine, right? So, for example, I would say probably the biggest impact on coming to Portugal, I would say, is probably the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Bureaucracy here in Portugal it can be really, really slow. Nobody really, cares too much for the most part. Um, it can actually be one of the reasons actually that Portugal is also a good country because it's a lot slower, more laid back and relaxed. But I want to at least make my clients aware that if you are coming here, be prepared to deal with it, right? Um, One good example. One time there was an American client that she arrived in Porto. She went there to buy a car. And when she was at the car stand, she was there for like an hour. And mind you, car salespeople, they make money on commission, which means you only get paid if you sell something. And then after an hour of going through all of those things, he tells her, "Hey, excuse me, my lunch break is now, so I'm going to go down to the restaurant. I'll be about an hour. If you want, you can stay here." And the guy leaves. This would
That's
have
hard.
never happened in America. Like I've had clients that asked if you could sue people if they're 5 minutes late or something like that, and I'm like, no, this is Portugal. If somebody gives you a time frame, you'll double or triple it, and that's
Yeah.
the real time frame, right? Especially if you're dealing with contractors or builders or people along those lines. That is the main thing. And then that guy in particular, then he came back an hour later and then they finished buying the property, but she was just there waiting for an hour in an office,
Crazy.
right?
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. So I would say that's also an issue if you want to start a business. The
Oh
paperwork
yeah.
and how people are not very punctual or disciplined. So how much of that, uh, let's say, an investor should take in consideration before putting his money in Portugal?
Well, that is another conversation altogether because I am also a certified business broker, and there's a lot that goes into the valuation and the buying and the selling of companies. I have a company. I have Portugal Door. The one of the worst things, it all depends on your volume, on a transactional volume per year. Okay, so for example, my company, um, just the fact that I have a company open every day, each salaried manager, boss, CEO, whatever, must pay social security. So that's at least 300 euros per month that goes out the door, whether you work or not, whether you have clients or not, whether you make money or not. Okay. Plus, you need to have an accountant, which is around 200 euros. And I'm including tax here as well. So that's already right off the bat about 500 euros every single month that you need to pay the government just for having a company open.
That's insane. I didn't know that.
Most people don't, and that's why people keep voting for higher taxes. But they're not aware that taxes make everybody's life more expensive, and not
Yeah.
just you and not just your boss or whatever. Like whenever you raise taxes for anyone, everyone's taxes and cost of living goes up. Like it's not in a vacuum. So I'm always a bit saddened when I see people say tax the rich,
Yeah.
because first of all, it's really easy to open a company elsewhere. Like I could have probably opened a company like in Delaware. I'd pay like $100 per year, and that's that. I'd have an operating company, and I would be able to invoice Portuguese businesses with no added taxes. But to give you an idea, let's say that I have a service, right? And the cost of that service is 1,000 euros. If I want to charge you for that, you have to pay me 1,230 euros, because those 230 are the value added tax that goes to the government. I have to pay that. And then because I get 100 euros in profit, if I don't spend that money, then I need to pay another 200 euros to the government for profit taxes. And so you have to pay 1,230 euros for me to have about 800.
That's insane. Yeah,
Now, let's say
I
that the country would double the taxes. Then, for those 1,000 euros, instead of charging you 1,230, I would have to charge you 460. You would be the one paying it, not the company. Like, the company just needs to add that on top, because there are fees, there are expenses, that there are things that the business must do to operate. And here's another thing that people often don't consider. You can notice that I took the opportunity to go on a tangent to talk about business and taxes, because this is something that I'm passionate about as well. So sometimes people have this idea that, oh, but it doesn't cost that much to do that thing, right? And real estate agents, again, are a prime target for this, because it's like you just take some pictures of the house and then you sell it and you get 5% or whatever, right? But sometimes it's also what's called the cost of opportunity. So, for example, let's say look, one time I spent a whole day with a couple. I took them to see Braga, Ponte de Lima. We went by Esposende, Barcelos, Viana do Castelo. Went all around in my car at my expenses, all of that. I charged them, I think, 500 euros for that or something at the time, right? To do all of that. You may think that's too expensive. I'm sure somebody will do it for cheaper. But my point here is this. My wife, which she doesn't feel as comfortable, in business and going outside and whatever and all of these things, if she were to do something like that, instead of 500, she would probably have to charge 5,000 or 10,000 or even more than that. Not because she could really do anything extra that I didn't for the most part, but because to do that, it would require a higher income for her to do that, because she's uncomfortable. She prefers to stay at home, take care of the kids, take care of the house. That's her environment. That's where she feels good, right? And she sometimes teaches people Portuguese. But to go outside of her comfort zone like that for that long period of time, it would have to be a really high price point. So sometimes that's also how people price things, because if it's for lower than, let's say, 1,000, then I'd rather not do it. And then you can do it yourself if you think it's too expensive.
Yeah. And I think in general, people don't know what money is. I'd say
no.
The vast majority of human beings are financially illiterate. And then that's not just a Portuguese thing. That happens.
No, it's a global thing.
And I have to say, it took me decades. Like, I'm 42 now. It took me decades, maybe till what you were saying, like late 20s. I think there's a turning point on men actually around that age, when you are not hitting 30, but like between 25 and 30. That's when you start to question certain things and evaluate what you did. And that is, and if it is going to be repeated in your life, like I experienced it now, but I don't want to get into that. But most people don't know what money is, but they have no clue. They have really
Correct.
no clue. Like and the worst is that they think they know, and because they have that assumption, they will never take the time to examine their own conceptions.
Yep. And that's when the boogeyman come in. So if you think you already know something, it makes it impossible for you to learn. If you think that the only way of making money is having a job or whatever, and if you want to earn more, you had to have a degree or something so you could get a better paying job, if those are your assumptions and what you think, and there's nothing else besides corruption, if the only other thing you can imagine, I either do this and I get paid peanuts and I waste my life here, or if I had to make more, I would need to be corrupt and a criminal, then if you're sure that's the only two ways, then you just assume that anybody else who has money must be corrupt and a criminal.
Yeah, big time. I have to assume in front of camera, like and I don't want to get into politics here. I'm mostly focused on morals, okay? But I was brought up in a very left-wing environment. And we always look at the wealthy people as monsters, because what we were told is if they own, if they possess, is because they did something unethical. And yes,
Yep.
in certain instances, that was the case.
Oh, there
But
are
that
many
was
for
the
sure.
exception. That was exceptions. Like
I've
most
met a few
people,
personally.
yeah. Me too. Even among the left-wing ones. But what I want to say is, most people work their asses off, like mad, like they tirelessly. That or maybe at some point they did something that they wouldn't recommend to their kids. Fine, because we're all human beings.
Hmm.
But there is the result of their wealth is mostly due to the hard work and network.
Yep.
Those are the two main elements, and not
Yep.
because they are monsters.
Yes, and I will add to that because I found that this is a point that trips up many people. It's very easy to interpret hard work as meaning doing something difficult and doing
Yeah.
something that takes a lot of physical labor and time and effort to do. Um, Probably a more accurate description would be to work hard at providing value. So there is an example I like giving. So let's say that you have a huge forest, right? And you need to have that whole forest cut down. And then as a test, you hire two people to see, how much you're going to pay them and if they're going to work or whatever. You have two trees, you hire them independently, and you have them chop each tree down. One of them brings a chainsaw, right? And he goes, he cuts the chainsaw. In a few minutes, he's done, cuts down the tree. The other one brings a spoon. And so you hire him, and then he grabs the spoon, and then he starts hitting the tree with the spoon. And after several weeks, finally the tree comes down. Now, my question is, who worked harder?
Yeah, it's
The
tricky,
guy with the spoon or the guy with the chainsaw?
tricky to say. Like I'm quite divided. I'd say the
No,
second.
who worked physically harder? The guy with the spoon or the guy with the chainsaw?
Maybe the guy with the spoon or not.
Yeah, the guy with the spoon, because he was there pounding the tree for like weeks.
Yeah,
But
physically, yeah, for sure, for sure.
but who
It
would you
requires more
hire?
effort.
And
Yeah,
in other words, who would be more valuable to you? The guy who could cut the tree in a few minutes, even though he had a much easier time doing it, or the guy who worked really hard and really physically putting his all out there,
yeah.
but took him a week to get through a spoon because he was doing it very inefficiently.
Of course, like it's not about sweating. It's about achievements. I don't care how much you run. I
Exactly.
don't care
It's about
how much
outcomes.
you, yeah, how much you like how wild are your facial expressions and all that. It's really about what you bring to the table. All the rest is it's not irrelevant, but it's secondary.
Exactly. And you may think that's not fair, but I mean, at the end of the day, we all want what's best for ourselves for the best value possible,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is, a company needs everything in order to be successful. They need people to do the hard, monotonous labor. That they just grind it out and they do the things and hit the buttons and whatever. And then, but even though they are vital, and they are essential, it doesn't mean that they're the most valuable to a company, right? So let's say that I have like, I don't know, a software company, like some kind of technology, okay? And then I have the developers, people who make the software and whatever. They had to study a lot. They need to know programming. They need to know how to talk to ChatGPT and Google. I've been a programmer too, by the way. So it's hard work, and sometimes it makes you want to vomit through your nose looking at the code, right? Uh, and then let's say there is a guy that I hired as a salesperson. He makes 5 phone calls and he sells like 50 million euros worth of software licenses. He didn't work that hard. He just called a few people and sold and negotiated. But who's more valuable to a company? That guy who made me 50 million, or the guys that do the code and develop the software? Of course, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
But if I only had programmers and I didn't have any sales, I would go bankrupt.
Yeah. It's the other one I'm thinking now is the marketing. Like you can do
Is that what? Sorry?
very good marketing.
Oh, marketing. Yeah.
Marketing is essential. Like you can do a hell of a job. I don't care about the field, but let's say podcasting, since we are here. But if you are not able to promote it effectively, you don't know the tools. You basically are not in touch with other podcasters, or you are not willing to make extra effort, let's say after the recording and going here and there, or learning, then it's pointless. You can be very, very skilled, but if you
Yes.
don't have the social abilities, then unless you are very lucky, but let's say you are discovered by someone who's influential and click with you, but that's like one in 10,000. So you need to be realistic. 1 in 10,000, it won't be you. It won't be you. You need to think like numerical, strategically, and have a tangible goal.
Yep.
And that's how you can improve. So you need to be humble. Like you can recognize that you're very good at what you do, but if you don't know the right people, chances are that you're going to be talking to the wall.
Yes, and let me tell you too, some of the most generous, both in terms of their time especially, which is our most valuable resource, and humble people that I've met have been the wealthiest too.
Yeah.
Again, not all of them, usual disclaimer, because everybody will always find a way to mess with it. But it's true. Like one of my mentors, he has over 40 years of real estate experience, right? He's the one that brought EXP here into Portugal. And when I started as a real estate agent, which I kind of was the class clown, to be honest with you, I would walk into the meetings, bon dia, to everyone, and it's like, oh, here's Vitor again, right? But still, he would take time out of his schedule. There have been many days where it was like 5, 6 a.m., and he would be up having a Zoom meeting with me to help me out with my career.
Yeah.
And all he would tell me, just pay it forward, meaning that when I'm in a good place, then I help someone the same way he helped me.
Yeah.
Which I think is a brilliant concept. And that's what I want to do. That's also why I love helping and sharing people with what I know. I then quickly realized that most people don't want to know. And it's actually offensive if you try teaching these to people who didn't ask you about it, especially. So if somebody talks to me, if somebody wants to understand how business works, how money works, which I'm still learning every single day, by the way, but after a bunch of years, I kind of have a rough idea of how it works, right? And anything I can share and teach, I will. But yeah, on that note, though, let me put it this way to also understand, like, growth and marketing and sales and all of these things.
Yeah.
Do you, Vitor, think that you personally could make a better hamburger than McDonald's?
I was never asked this question. I have to be honest. Well, first of all, and just for the people out there, we haven't spoken. This is the first time, so a lot of things you know about me. I'm terrible in the kitchen. Okay.
Right, I know. Regardless of that, do you think
I'm very bad in the kitchen? I hate, and it's not that I'm just not skilled. I hate spending time in the kitchen. Like
right, but could you make a better hamburger
than McDonald's? Probably
Yes.
not. And it's not about McDonald's. It's about me, because I'm pretty bad at doing things that I don't like to do. So based on that, I would say that McDonald's would serve you a better burger than me, because
That's fair.
I'm
But
just not the
okay,
one.
let me put another guardrail just to make
Yeah.
sure we're talking the same language. Let's say you just had to make one, right? Even if it took you some research and some experimenting and whatever, do you think that ultimately, if you really tried just making it this one time, you could make a better tasting hamburger than McDonald's?
I could, but it's not about McDonald's.
Right.
It's about me. It's about
Right.
me.
You could. You really don't want to, but you could, right?
Yeah.
I,
Let's
I
say,
think I think most people could.
yeah.
But here's the thing: could you develop a system that sells as many hamburgers as McDonald's?
And I would say, on that note, I'm going back to my poor kitchen skills. That's a tougher job because they have created that not overnight, but they have that in place for, I don't know, plenty, like 2 3 decades. So even if
Mhm.
I started now, yeah, and I have some understanding of sales, promotion, and all that, I wouldn't dare to compete with McDonald's. Like, so even my poor kitchen skills will make me in a more favorable position to come up with a better burger than
Right.
McDonald's. Than competing with that system, and
Exactly.
that's really telling that their selling system it's flawless.
Yeah, and the reason why I mentioned that is for the event that somebody here is seeing this, considering either starting a business or started a business a while ago or something like that. I find that most entrepreneurs get stuck on the product. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm going to have the best product or the best service or the best this or the best that. And then it doesn't work because it's not about the product. Of course, you should have a good product, as good as you can make it, right? As long as that doesn't absurdly increase costs either for you or for the client. But there's a balance there in between. But it's not about the product, it's about the systems.
yeah.
Like, how well can you make it? How well can you distribute it? Do people even know you exist? Because if
Mhm.
people don't know you exist, you can have the best anything in the world, that it doesn't matter. And especially after I've taken several sales trainings, I really do believe that sales is one of the best and most important skills in the world, because you use it for everything. Like, I'm right now trying to sell you and your audience on the idea that you should learn sales. And
Yeah.
sales to me is communication. It's not
Mhm.
forcing people to do some things against their will. That's manipulation.
Yeah.
So even Grant Cardone says that if being a good salesman means you can sell ice to an Eskimo, I'm not a good salesman because I would never do that. Because they don't need the ice. They
Yeah.
live surrounded by ice, right?
And what
Like,
you're just saying, Victor, is applicable to other fields. I'm now diverting this, let's say, to creativity. Let's say you are very good at writing, okay,
Mhm.
but you don't have the routine. Like you can be quite talented, you can be the inspired type, but if you don't have the schedule and the availability, it's irrelevant because you never
Yep.
put those words into writing. Like, okay, you can be gifted, and from time to time, you come up with, I don't know, a novel or a poetry collection or a play. I don't care. But you can do way better if you have that system in place. And
Yep.
it's all that is about. I also got to understand that it's all about building the, if, let's say, the life. Yeah, the life that allows you to create or generate whatever you are doing or building a business. It's about having that system in place. And that's the most important thing. Without that, there will be no product, there will be nothing. You'll be sterile.
Yep. For example, you know Vincent van Gogh,
Yeah,
the guy who did Starry Night. Did you know that he only sold one painting his whole life?
yes.
Maybe one of the best painters in the world, but because he didn't know how to sell, he lived in misery. He died in misery, actually. It was
And
only
then
when his friends started selling his work that the word got out, right?
yeah,
So, for example, the telephone, like Thomas Edison, nobody wanted it. Many didn't even believe it. He had to actually supply electricity for free for a long time until people even started using the telephone. And now look, everybody has one in their pockets,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
The trains, like when trains were first developed, nobody wanted to ride a train because they thought if you were faster than 30 miles per hour, your heart would stop,
yeah.
right? So sales is essential for development and for
100%,
everything. So
100%. Yeah.
again, people focus a lot on, like going back to that YouTubers group. Everybody's like, oh, why don't I have views? Why don't I have this? Why don't I have that? Sales is the most important. And I think that's why many people focus so much on SEO and whatever, but that's not the whole picture. Like, everything is already way too saturated. So you need not only to get out there and promote, thumbnails and titles. Those are very important because that's the most direct way you have to sell your videos and content. But then also the viewer must be sold on what they're seeing. It's not just getting them to click, it's continuously getting them sold so that they want to continue watching and they want to see more and they want to see again. And even better if then they start sharing it with other people.
Yeah.
Because then they're really sold. That means that you provided so much value to that person that they want to go out of their way and spread that because they got value in excess to what they felt like they deserved.
Yeah, and they start working for you. Like, they are not your staff. You are not paying them in, let's say, on a monetary level, but because you provided them with value, they are willing to give you back the favor. And we all do that in our life. Like, if someone,
and they're happy to do it.
Yes.
We all do that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, sometimes you go like to a really, really good restaurant with really nice prices. You go tell all your friends about it.
Yeah.
When is the other time, besides an exceptional service, that you tell everyone about some business?
Yeah.
When they're terrible.
Yes.
Never go there again.
Yeah, the word of mouth is powerful.
Yes.
It's still a thing, but it's especially if it comes from someone you trust, or
Exactly.
they have similar values or interests. You say, this restaurant is for my friend, then it's for me. Or if it's not for him, I won't go there. I will go next door. So it's like, that's why you should be very careful about what kind of experience you provide to people, because it's not only them, it's their environment, it's their inner circle, it's their family and relatives, and their social media. That's another thing that these days it's vital. Whatever you do, the whole world can know.
Yep, exactly. And that is one of the reasons also why I love working with referrals and also sending referrals for real estate so much. Because when, if you try to reach out to people, of course they're going to be defensive. Everybody wants to try to get you to buy their snake oil or whatever it is every so often, right? But if you get a referral, if somebody says, hey, talk to this guy, he has what you need, then they are so much easier to trust you. Like, I've had, people who, I don't know, saw my video on YouTube or something like that, for example, right? Because I did an interview with one of our first clients. They would see my video, book a meeting and whatever, and then I would explain, I would show our contract and our agreements and all of that. They would be like, I have to think about it, which is code for, I'm not going to move forward, but I want to be polite, so I won't tell you no directly. But then when you have a referral, sometimes you're like, hey, so I'm just going to explain my agreement. This is how it works. This is how much you pay me. Okay, we'll sign it. We didn't even read it. Okay, we can read it if you want. Right? So they just are much more likely to trust you right off the bat. And it makes sense too, because we build communities, we trust the communities. And if somebody already pre-vetted you, then that is a good sign. And I also love, like, when I'm doing business, like relationships and connections, like with builders or other agents or stuff like that, or lawyers, I like, on this specific industry, on this region, I like picking one person that I know and trust, and I work with them. The only situation where I would work with someone else is usually if that person stopped working or if they're unavailable or something like that. Then I may go to plan B. but I prefer focusing on one person, building that relationship, working in synergy, and helping each other out like that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, man, when it comes to picking a partner, whether it's a business partner or even an intimacy one. Like you want reliability, you want to peace of mind, and you can only attain that if you can trust the other. So the skills, yes, they matter. They matter about how talented is the person, how good they are, what they do. But if one day you knock the door and they took a flight to Jamaica, then they are not your partner. That's it. That's it. You better work with someone who is not as gift or not as uh, not as good on whatever they do, but at least you know they are there. You can count on them, and that's something that you cannot neglect. Like a reliable partner, it's a partner for life.
Yes, and I should let you know too. Now that you mentioned that, one of the most useful things that learning sales did for me is it helped me have a much better and easier relationship with my daughter, with my wife, because again, sales is about communication. Once you understand communication, once you understand how people work, how to get your point across, the mistakes most people do when communicating, then you can address most of that. You can realize what you do that is not, very recommended, let's say.
Yeah,
So sales definitely helped me out immensely in having a better relationship with my family, friends, and even people that I never met. So there is one thing that I love doing as well, which is basically subverting expectations. Uh, Sometimes I always feel like I'm almost being mean to someone, but then in the end, it all works out. Which is one time I went to this, it was a mall, right? They had a cafe in there, and there were two old ladies in front of me, and they were, ordering and whatever, and then they moved off to pay. And when it was my turn, and she, said good morning and whatever, and I said, hey, listen, I know you probably most clients tell you this, but this is something that I need. This is something that I want. I'd like a coffee and a pastry, please. And then she's like that. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, I just want a coffee and a pastry if you don't mind. And then the other two old ladies are like, oh my God, what was going on? And then everybody starts laughing because they thought that was going to be the client from hell that was going to,
yeah,
torment them and yell at them and whatever. And I was just being a silly goose.
yeah. And then the other thing in terms of communication is um, people behave in a different manner if they are writing an email, and uh, they can be radically different if they talk to you verbally, whether it's a phone call or face to face. So I think there is a lot of benefit from picking the phone or meeting someone in person, because then you can see exactly whom you are dealing. Because when you are writing,
That's also
it can
true.
it can be cold. The communication can be cold, not always, but it can be misleading. So when I'm hesitant about who is on the other side, even when I'm scared, not that I'm scared, but that's when I feel I'm being intimidated intentionally, I just grab the phone and say, "Hey, let's have a chat." And I'd say four out of 5 times, I start to build a relationship with that person, and even the email tone change from that
Yes.
time onwards, which is great.
I can give you two quick tips on that note. Okay. The first of all, and this is very important for you and anybody listening, and this is where most of the written communication problems come from, is that you can't put tone in text. So human communication, it's only about 17% of words we use. It's 58% the body language and like 35% the tone. All right. So quick question. Can I tell you yes by saying no?
Of course you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
No.
Yeah, of course. And the other way around.
Yeah, exactly.
It
Yeah,
happens
of
all the time.
course. Yes,
Happens all
sure.
the time. Yeah. Happens all the
Right.
time. Yeah.
And so we use tone a lot, especially
Yeah.
in Mandarin because they have a tonal language, but that's another conversation. So we
Especially
use
in,
tone.
sorry, I couldn't catch
In
it.
Mandarin, in Chinese.
Yeah. Yes.
But in text, we do not have tone. And so sometimes when we're sending a text, we have a tone in our minds that we are trying to convey, but it does not come across that way on the other end. So emails should be dry and specific. I like using emojis personally, even when I'm dealing with high-end clients. I like using emojis because that shows that I am smiling and I'm not like giving them orders or yelling at them or whatever it is, right? But the second note is you were talking about the phone call and whatever. So, and this is true whether it's a client, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member. Whenever you want to build a relationship with someone, this is a really easy to understand rule of thumb. The more effort it takes you, the more valuable it is.
Yes.
Sending a message, making a phone call, making a video call, if the person, is okay with that. And then ultimately it's paying them a visit.
Yeah.
Like, for example, let's say hypothetically that I would fly over to where you are to have this interview with you. Would that not be like such a bigger impact than if we were just quote unquote doing it through here?
Everyone likes to notice efforts from others towards them. Like
Yes.
it's being appreciated. It's on us. Like even like a tap on your back or a hug or a smile or a gesture, whatever gesture it is. But everyone gets moved when you see that the other person cares. That's the best start that you can.
And it's subconscious too. Sometimes it's not really about caring, but it's like, hey, if you went through all of your way to drive up to in front of my house just to talk to me, and assuming you don't have a restraining order, then okay, then you're a cool guy. I like you. Right?
Yeah.
As long as you're not being annoying. If you're coming to knock on my house every time and talk about my vehicle's extended warranty, then that's another situation.
Yeah. I think that's a great but Vitor, I think we could be here forever. We haven't really touched in all the topics we had in mind, and somehow we open other avenues. But I'm not unsatisfied with that. On the contrary, that tells that the outcome of this conversation was above my higher expectations. So I want to say a massive thank you.
Here to help, my friend. If you need anything, let me know. If somebody watching this wants to get in touch, if I can help in any way about Portugal, if you want me to help you determine whether or not Portugal may even be right for you, because we have had clients who gave up coming to Portugal. We had some that came to Portugal and then left back to the US. Okay. And that's fine. I want to avoid unnecessary time and money expenditures if I can avoid it. So if anybody needs anything, you can go to portugaldoor.com and you have my contact details in there. You can schedule a meeting. So I'm here to help. Real estate is my specialty. I like talking about finances and business and all of these things as well. But if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Yeah, thanks very much. I just want to tell the audience what we have in schedule for this week. So we now have these recurrent sessions every Wednesday and Thursday, and there won't be any rest this week. So tomorrow we have more of current affairs or politics, whatever you want to call it. So we'll discuss, to be myself and Marco Alexander, my co-host, we're going to discuss what we call the decadence of Europe in terms of values, morals, and all that. We're going to have two guests. One was with us last week, Niram Ferenti, and also Gary Craig Powell, who lives next to you, Vitor, by the way. But we'll talk about this gentleman next time. And on Thursday we have the usual League of Ireland session with the lads here. So we're going to discuss football. We have a special guest. I still don't know who is this because we are still trying to figure it out. Who is the right person for this episode? And we'll discuss the games, a lot of games, because there were games on Friday and also Monday. So we're going to discuss them all and also do some previews for next weekend. And in terms of one-on-one interviews, there's nothing for the next week, so I will keep it confidential for now. And I want to say again, thank you very much, Vitor. All the best for your endeavors. It was a great question. I hope we can meet in person. Maybe next time I'm up in the north, I couldn't express my love for the north of Portugal, but we'll do that next time.
No problem. Happy to receive you here.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Okay.
And,
Take care.
have a good
Bye-bye.
evening. Take care. Bye.